Hello there, you beautiful people, and welcome to this lecture on the if statement. This lecture holds the magic key to supercharging your programming ability, so be sure to soak up every last drop of knowledge from this lecture that you can. It's going to be so worth it, I promise you. So in this lecture, we're going to go over the if statement. You're going to learn what an if statement is, how it works, and how to use one to control your code. You're also going to learn about the else and else if keyword that will basically make you a logical genius in no time. So by the end of this section, you're going to know how to create logic in Python, and you'll be well on your way to creating smarter and more intelligent programs. So let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, what the heck is an if statement? Well, an if statement allows us to execute a certain piece of code only if a condition is true. Now this gives us fine-grained control over what pieces of our code are executed when, and allows our programs to be rather intelligent. Let's see what one looks like, right? So first of all, we type the if keyword, which you can see is all lowercase and it's gone yellow. You then type some condition, like what I was showing you before with the comparison operators, and then a colon. And then everything inside of this if statement will only be executed if this condition is true. So let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to go ahead and create another file called if.py. So let me save this, desktop, Python Bible, if.py. So let me maximize this and we're good. So what I'm going to do is on the very first line, I'm going to type the word if, then the boolean true, then my colon, and I'm going to press enter. Now you're going to see here that Python has immediately indented my cursor. And with when we use logic and all this kind of stuff where things go inside other things, called nesting, if you zoom out of the code, it makes the code look like it goes in and out and like moves around, and it kind of looks like a snake. Okay, so that's my personal reason why I like to think Python was called Python, but I think it was named after Monty Python, the old British comedy show. So anyway, that's an aside. Inside here, I'm going to print it worked. Okay, now I'm going to save and run this, and we're going to see that it prints out it worked. So let's break it down, see what happened. Let me open back up that code. I said that the way that you make your if statement, you have if, then a condition, then a colon, then something inside. All right, so let's just say the code inside. Well, the way that this worked is our condition, say if we did 3 is greater than 2, right? At the end of the day, that condition is either going to give back one of two values. It's going to give back true, or it's going to give back false, right? Now, whatever condition is here, it's either going to give back true or false. If that condition gives back true, then the code inside the if statement will run. So by writing true here, it's basically just, it's got what the if statement wants. If I wrote false in there, the code won't run. So if I do this now, we see nothing happened, right? So only if this condition, whatever it is, comes back to give true, will the code work. So let's say I wanted to check whether a number was bigger than another one. Okay, so let's go back into our script. Where's the script? Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called num1, and I'm going to set that equal to 100. I'm also going to create another variable called num2 and set that equal to 50. Now I want to check if num1 is bigger than num2, and if it is, I want to print num1 is bigger to the screen. So for that I need to use an if statement. So let's just delete this and start from scratch. An if statement always starts with the if keyword, just like that. You can tell you've done it right because it's gone yellow. Then I need a condition. So my condition is going to be num1 is greater than num2. Now this condition, as we saw before, it's going to give back true or false, just like we saw in the last video. You then put a colon, hit enter, and the code's going to automatically indent. And I'm going to, inside this code, if that condition is true, I want to print num1 is bigger than num2. So if I save that and I run it, we're going to see that num1 is bigger than num2 gets printed to the screen. But if I change num2 to be 150, let's say, so now num2 is bigger, if I run that, we see nothing happens. Because what Python did is it checked, is num1 bigger than num2? Is 100 greater than 150? It came back with false. Therefore, the if statement won't run because the if statement only runs when its condition is true. So let me just set these numbers back to what they were to begin with. Okay, now we've got a condition. If this condition is true, this code will run. So how can we get something else to run if the condition is false? Well, for that, we need to use the else keyword. Okay, so let's say I would do else here, and let's say print num2 is bigger than num1. So if this condition isn't true, it will run this code. So let me show you. For now, num1 is bigger than num2, right? Because 100 is bigger than 50. So if we run it, it's going to say num1 is bigger than num2. Brilliant. But if I go back and I change it so that num2 is bigger, let's say make it 500 this time, now what's going to happen is it's going to say num2 is bigger than num1. Amazing, right? So now our code is being able to think and respond depending on the state of our variables. But what happens if I make these two equal to one another? It says num2 is bigger than num1, which isn't true, right? Now let me just break down why that happened. It first checked if num1 is bigger than num2. Okay, that's false because they are equal, right? 100 isn't bigger than 100. They're equal. And we told it in every other case, say num2 is bigger than num1, right? So when they're equal, because this is false, it's still going to print this, and that's not what we want. What we want to do is first check if num1 is bigger, and if it's not, check if num2 is bigger, and if it's not, they must be equal. So for that, we're going to use the else if or elif keyword. So let me show you what I mean. If num1 is bigger than num2, do this. Else, if, so elif num2 is bigger than num1, then print this. Print num2 is bigger than num1. Else, print num2 or num1. Actually, no. Both numbers are equal. So what happens here? If num1 is bigger than num2, print num1 is bigger than num2. Else, if num2 is bigger than num1, print num2 is bigger than num1. In every other case than these two, if both of these are false, just say both numbers are equal, which is what must happen. So if I run that, it's going to say both numbers are equal. Now, how cool is that? So if I go back in here and I change this to be 105, so num1 is bigger, it's going to say num1 is bigger than num2. And if I go in here and I change this to be 500, it's going to say num2 is bigger than num1. And if I change them both to be 500, it's going to say that both numbers are equal. Now tell me that isn't amazing. Epic. You've made a program that can think. Well done. So we've covered quite a lot in this lecture. So let's just have a quick recap to make sure that you've got it all. You first learned that an if statement is created using the word if in lowercase, followed by some kind of logical condition and a colon, which is the two dots on top of each other. When you press enter, the code's going to automatically indent to show you what's inside, what the code is that would run if this condition is true. That code will only run if the condition is true, and it won't if that condition is false. It's as simple as that. You then learned how to make something else happen if the first condition is false. So you'd have some condition here, you'd have some code, and then if that condition is false, you would run the second code, right? So it would check this condition. If that condition is true, it will run this. But if it's not, it will run this. If this condition is true, this code won't run. Okay, so that's where you use the else statement. Now, sometimes you want to check one condition, and if that's false, you want to check another condition. For that, you would use the else if. So you'd have condition 2, code 2, and you might have multiple of these as well. So you could have like condition 3, code 3, and otherwise you'd have code 4. So if the first condition is true, this code will run. If that is false and this is true, this will run. If that is false and that is false and this is true, then this will work. And if all three of these are false, then this one will work. Okay, so you can build up rather complicated logical systems using just these rather simple building blocks. So I'm sure you can begin to grasp just how powerful this can be in your programs, right? Especially when you can have variables in your conditions, and these variables can be updated from other parts of the program, and they can be automatically updating themselves and stuff. It's really, really powerful stuff. So there's still quite a lot of cool stuff to be coming up. Sometimes we want to combine multiple conditions together. So maybe you want to check whether two things are true, or if one thing is true or another thing is true in one condition. And being able to combine conditions together to make one condition is where we need logical operators, which are what are up next. So up next, I do have a coding challenge for you to check that you've understood this lecture. And after that, I'll see you in the next video to learn about logical operators to make our conditions a lot more powerful.